Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. We're very much looking forward to two huge Ulster derbies coming up this weekend with lots of points at stake and lots at stake across all the games involving Ulster teams. We're going to look forward to Cavan and Down first. It's the big one in Division 2 this week. Then we'll look at Derry and Donegal in Division 1 on the rest of the Ulster games coming up. So I'm delighted to be joined by former Down footballer John Clarke, along with Damien Donohoe from We Are Cavan. Lads, brilliant to hear from you, and thanks very much for coming on. And I suppose, John, I know me and you was talking offer a wee bit there. It feels very much like this is must-win territory now for Down heading into this one.
It is pretty much, yeah. Listen, Down have been very competitive in their 4 games to date. Probably unlucky, only have picked up 1 win against Cork in the home game a couple of weeks ago. So last Sunday's defeat to Louth was, it was down as a big game. And unfortunately, they just came out the wrong side of it, and that has put pressure on Down going into this Saturday evening's game in Breffni Park. And, I don't think anybody in the Down camp or Down support will hide away from the fact that it's a must win. Lose on Saturday and it's going to be a real tough battle till survive in Division 2. But a win on Saturday, all of a sudden, you're heading into the Westmeath game the following week at home, thinking that maybe a win could keep you safe, so it's very fine margins and it's such a competitive division, and most of the results so far have been give or take a few points either way, so Down will have taken plenty of positives from their campaign to date. Yes, they'll be ultimately frustrated that they've only had 1 win, but they'll certainly be eyeing up a big performance on Saturday evening. Hope they can learn from some of the mistakes from last Sunday and obviously the Meath defeat a couple of weeks ago as well. So listen, they're more than capable of getting a result, but Cavan, no doubt their tails will be up in the back of that comeback win against Westmeath, and Down will be under no illusions that Breffni Park is always a tough place to go. I think Down have a fairly mixed record down there over the past few years, so it's never been an easy place to go. So it's all set up for a big game.
We'll come back to Breffni Park because I do have a few recent records in Breffni Park, and surprisingly, out of the last 7 games that these two teams have played, 5 of them have been in Breffni Park. But we'll touch on that in a second. Damien, I'll bring you in here just on Cavan at the minute. It didn't look so good after the first couple of rounds, but they got back to winning ways, and suddenly maybe Cavan's looking up rather than down at this stage.
Yeah, it's hard to know where Cavan are looking. There's always this idea that you have to either be looking up or down. I think we're looking straight ahead is all we can really look at, because after the Monaghan defeat, there wasn't panic setting in, but the Meath defeat and the manner in which Meath just blew us out of the water. Panic was setting in, definitely amongst the supporters, and people were questioning everything that was going on. But to be fair to Raymond Galligan and the management and the players, there was wholesale changes. There was a lot of surgery, and they got it right against Louth and played an awful lot better. And probably then coming into the Westmeath game, there was a lot being made of it. It was a big game in terms of obviously both teams at the bottom end of the table. I think it was second from bottom against bottom at that stage, and then you had the Dermot McCabe factor, who's the GDM in Cavan GA, that had the Cavan public very much up and watching for this game. And there was a real build-up, and we don't always get a good build-up to games. But then you went down, and the first half performance was Meath-esque. It was so bad by Cavan, it was unthinkable. But to be fair to Westmeath, their kicking was excellent. They hit 2-pointers for fun in the second half. Luke Loughlin was exceptional. But in the second half, Cavan came out and played an absolute blinder. They dominated kickouts. They hit 2-pointers from Oisin Brady and Gerard McKiernan and Darragh McPheedy. Darragh Lovett came off the bench and hit 1. But the overall play was really good. Park Faulkner was immense. James Smith was on top of his game. And the second half performance, I suppose it's changed the whole dynamic around the game. I think, 14 points down at one stage, 29 minutes gone, and Cavan were 14 points down. And you thought, in old money, there's no chance. Even half of old money, there's very, very little chance. But with the new rules, with the 2-pointers, with weather conditions, with wind, anything's really possible with these new rules, and it keeps everybody engaged for longer. So I think it works exceptionally well. I was making the point, though, that if you take everybody looked at conversion rate, and Cavan's conversion rate has been quite poor in terms of shots to score ratio. So, a score being just one score, though, as in a goal being one score or a 2-pointer being one score, I don't think it's relevant any longer. I think we probably need to change that stat and look at our points to shots ratio, our points total to shots ratio. And in that case, Cavan's 2-pointers, they hit 10 shots for 2-pointers against Westmeath. They scored 5 of them. They got 10 points from 10 shots. In old terms, that's worth it. So look at Cavan at this point. We don't know where we're at, but we do know, and we knew coming into Louth, Westmeath and Down that was going to decide the season. It was going to decide the league. And if you win against Down, you're definitely looking up. If you lose against Down, you're looking down. And that's the reality of it. So it's a massive game this weekend.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nearly if Down win this weekend to sort of drag Cavan back into that relegation fight at the bottom end. But John had mentioned sort of the recent history and looking across the last 7 meetings between the two teams over the last 10 years. Cavan they've won 5 and Down have only got 2 wins over Cavan. The most recent one was, of course, that Tailteann Cup game. I was at that in Breffni Park. That was an incredible game, arguably, maybe the best Down have played under Conor Laverty. They didn't go on to win it that year, but they were brilliant that year. And I suppose looking at it, Cavan obviously have the lion's share of the wins, but John, most of these games that I mentioned earlier are in Breffni Park, so Breffni Park's an incredibly difficult place to go.
It is, and even going back till the years I was playing down there, we never got anything easy down in Breffni Park, and I struggle to remember actually a game that we won down there, so I think there was a couple of draws, but yeah, it's a tough one. You mentioned that Tailteann Cup game, that probably was one of the best performances Down had over the past 2 or 3 years, so they'll be looking something similar again this Saturday evening. But one thing that does worry me, Damien had mentioned some of the players there, Faulkner, Smith, McKiernan, Oisin Kiernan, all them lads are quality players who have a bit of physicality and size about them, and that's something that Down have been struggling with at stages last Sunday, at stages against Meath. The bigger physical teams Down just naturally don't have them bigger type players in their team at the minute. They have plenty of pace, they have plenty of fast runners, boys who are good on the ball, fast hands, but when it comes to that physical battle, particularly with some of the kickouts at the minute going long and 50-50 battles around the middle, Down have been struggling a wee bit on that front. You take Pat Haven and probably Oran Murdoch out of it. The rest of the lads are probably medium to average size players, so that is a worry going until Saturday, and particularly Jared McKiernan. I know he's back and he kicked 5 there last weekend, so he's going to be a huge factor in Down. He tends to have good games against Down, so Down will need to match up well on him. I know Sam Mulroy came into the game well last week, and Jordan Morris was a standout for me. So, Down will have to earmark the 2 or 3 main scoring threats that Cavan have and try and tie them up. If they can do that, then the room is shite at the far side, because they have been scoring pretty well. And Damien had mentioned the 2-pointers there that Cavan scored. Down have been, I think, one of the best sides in across all 4 divisions for scoring 2-pointers this season to date. So it's obviously something they've worked a lot on, and it'll be something they'll keep their eye on ahead of Saturday's game. And conditions again will determine what way it goes. But if Down can certainly get a few 2-pointers, the likes of Pat Haven has been inspirational so far this season. Get him on the ball as much as possible and try and get a good start and keep the Cavan crowd fairly quiet for as long as possible.
Grode McKiernan coming back in, Damien. I suppose Michael Murphy has sort of overshadowed all these. Aidan O'Shea come back last week. Grode McKiernan's back, but everybody's still talking about Murphy, and we're going to talk about him too later on the show. But Grode McKiernan coming back into the mix this year. How big of an addition is he for Cavan?
A 6'5" addition. Like he's a giant of a man, and I think the year away really, I suppose, it emphasised how important he has been to Cavan. And some of us in Cavan knew it, but others expected more of him and more consistently. And in reality, there was nothing really more he could be doing at any one stage, because what we wanted out of Garode was a lording midfielder who was, catching all kickouts and dominating kickouts. And then we wanted him to score 6, 7, 8 points a game as a forward as well. And it just wasn't physically possible. But what he's doing now is he's given us a big option on kickouts. That we went from a time in 2016, we played Tyrone in an Ulster semi-final. And I think on that team, there was 6 guys that were 6'4" or above. So we had a very big team. We went to a point then when we were after dropping back last year to quite a small team. You had Killian Clarke, that's north of 6'3". I'm not great on heights, but north of 6'3" anyway. But he would have been the standout tall player that we had. But now we've Grod McKiernan back. We have Evan Crowe, a young lad coming in, a good big tall unit, and James Smith is doing really well in the middle third of the field. So look, at Grod's addition now is that you can play him in different positions. We can play him in as one of the front 3, or you can play him out in the middle of the field when necessary. And we just realised what an asset he has been and is currently to Cavan. It's no surprise that fortunes changed when he came back. Like, he came on at halftime against Meath. He kicked a few points that day, and then against Louth, all of a sudden, when he's back for his first start, our fortunes start to change again, and we've won 2 games since he's been back. So that's not just a coincidence. That's the ability that Grod McKiernan has.
And I suppose just asking about the sort of age profile of the team, Damien. I know, was it Malachi Clarkin had a piece at the weekend, and he sort of outlined, the 6 or 7 boys that are, 30 plus at this stage. Is that a concern, Damien, over obviously not in the immediate term, but over the next couple of years, that the best players for Cavan are sort of north of 30?
It's a big concern. It is a big concern. We went from a situation back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, where we won 4 Ulster under 21 titles in a row. We won an Ulster minor title. 2015, St. Pat's Cavan won a McRory title. And the underage structure was the conveyor belt was churning out quality players. Like we lost out to Dublin in an All-Ireland under 21 semi-final in 2014 with a team that had Jack McCaffrey, Brian Fenton, Kieran Kilkenny, Conor O'Callaghan, all these superstar names, James McCarthy, all of those players that went on to win multiple All-Irelands. They beat us by an injury time point and a controversial free. But we didn't continue with that development. Our underage academies fell off a cliff. We stopped doing work with them. And now we're looking at the scenario where there's a stat Paul Fitzpatrick has come in this week's Celt. I can't just bring it up to hand, but it's something like, I think of all of the scores we've got so far in the league, maybe a handful have or less have come from players under the age of 30. So we're really looking and saying we're squeezing the last out of the guys from that era, and then we're hoping for some individual talent that has come through without really the underage preparation that's been necessary to guarantee the success. So like we've had 1 under 20 final since 2014. We've been in 2 Ulster minor finals. We've had no successes. So unfortunately, the underage conveyor belt has completely fallen off in Cavan, and it has done for the last 10 years or more. And we're seeing the rewards of the lack of work, unfortunately, coming to pass. But having said that, there are some green shoots. James Smith, I think he's 26. He's played really well. Last 2 games, he's been exceptional. Darragh Lovett's been coming off the bench and playing quite well. Niall Carlin, as a cornerback there, is doing very, very well. It'll be interesting to see who he goes up against. But there are a few young players coming through. Evan Crowe, as we mentioned, he's only 19 and he's playing at midfield. So there's a little bit of hope coming through there with some individual talent. But the walls and walls and walls that were coming back in the middle part of the last decade that were coming through, we don't have that anymore, unfortunately.
And just before we move on, John, we'll finish every sort of preview show like this. We'll ask for predictions, and I know how both of you are going to go, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Who do you see coming out on top this weekend?
Well, listen, it's going to be a tight game. It is, and conditions will play a big part, and I'm not sure what the weather gives for the weekend. I'm sure it's going to be a wee bit calmer than it was last weekend, but I just think Down's need maybe this weekend is going to be that wee bit greater than Cavan. They know the pressure's on them. This is a big test. This, I'm not going to say a young team, but it's a developing team, and this, a lot of eyes will be on progress this weekend to see can they get over the line. That they've been close in certain games over the past couple of years and didn't get over the line. But a win on Saturday evening will be huge for this group coming through, and it would give them a massive boost into the last two games and ultimately then into championship. So I'm going to go. I wouldn't rule out a draw, but I'm going to go a 2 or 3 point Down win.
How do you see it going, Damien?
Do you know what? The only point well, look, I don't agree actually with John. I'm going to be honest with you, John. I think Cavan's need is greater, and given the age profile of this Cavan team, if we lose this game, all the good work that they've done over the years playing in Division 1 and winning that Ulster title, it'll be tarnished because you're more than likely staring down the barrier of relegation down to Division 3. Some of these players are going to step away in the next couple of years. They don't want to be in Division 3. They want to leave Cavan maybe in Division 2 or Division 1 if you got lucky. But so their need is absolutely massive on these Cavan boys. I think it's very, very important. Cavan have to be defensively very good. Oran Murdoch at full forward is operating really well. He's got 1-6 so far to his name. He's going to take real watching. His physical power and his aerial ability, I wouldn't be surprised, but we see a relocation of Pádraig Faulkner to go in and try to do a job there. He's a former fullback all-star, so that could happen. And Pat Heveron, he's got 35 points so far this year in the 4 games. 24 of them are coming from dead balls. So Cavan's discipline is going to have to be really, really crucial to stop his influence on the game. I think McAvoy, I'm interested to see how Ryan McAvoy, will he line up with James Smith or will he line up with Rod McKiernan? But he's going to have to take one of those players. And he's a player as well capable of putting shackles on it. But I just think then when you look past it, there's probably that bit more experience in Cavan when you bring in Jared Smith and the goal that he got the last day against Westmeath, and Darren McPheedy is kicking 2 points for fun, and Oisin Kieran and Kieran Brady are starting to come into it. I think Cavan's experience will get us over the line because they have to get over the line. If you lose this game, you're into relegation, and there's no two ways about that. Down have you on the head-to-head. You just have a win over Westmeath in the relegation battle, and maybe Louth if they're drawn into it, but I don't see it coming to that. I think the loser of this game is in real trouble. And if Cavan lose it, I think relegation is staring you down the barrel. So I think Cavan will come out and we'll see a formidable performance. I think their experience will get them over the line.
Yeah, huge game for both, and whoever comes out on top of that, as you say, Damien, should go a long way to being safe in their Division 2 status. But we're going to move on to the rest of the Ulster teams. And just before we do, we're going to have a quick break, and we'll be back in part 2, and we'll look ahead to Derry and Donegal and the rest of the Ulster games.
The Gaelic Lives podcast is brought to you by the Northwest News Group. We publish several local newspapers in the region, including the Ulster Herald, Strabane Chronicle, Tyrone Herald, Donegal News, and the Fermanagh Herald. We also have a number of online news brands, including wearetyrone.com. The Northwest News Group, telling the stories that matter to you.
So, man, Derry and Donegal, I suppose, John, we're speaking about Cavan and Down, talking about must win. It's the same for Derry in this one. They're on 1 point after 4 games. They're bottom of Division 1. It's been a long time since they've won a game. I know I was listening to the Smaller Fish podcast, and Conan Doherty was saying that they've won 1 game in 11 months or whatever it is. The championship win over Westmeath last year was their last win since the league final. So it's must-win territory for Derry, not only to stay in Division 1, but just sort of to break that record.
Yeah, no, Derry, and I watched the Derry-Dublin game last weekend, and it was very disappointing in Derry. Derry are coming from a team who are National League champions. Everybody knows the drama that went on after their league campaign last year, and some maybe saying Derry are trying to peak a wee bit later this year and get a run on the championship. But from what I seen them from last Saturday evening in Croke Park, they were a shadow of the team what they were at stages last year and even the year before. So I'm not sure what's going on. Paddy Tally has his work cut out till try and get the best out of them heading into this weekend's clash with Donegal. It's going to be a huge game for them, and they'll probably know defeat is ultimately relegation. A win win gives them a hope of surviving, but Donegal will be disappointed with the first half in particular. Last Sunday down in Salt Hill, of course, conditions had a factor in that, but you'd expect a reaction from them, and I would be very, very surprised if Donegal don't win this by 5 or 6 points.
I think, Damien, we were having the discussion on Monday's review show that do Donegal want to get any more points because they're probably safe at this stage, but they don't want to get too many points and end up in a league final because they've Derry in the championship the week after the league final. So it's a balancing act probably for Donegal, and then you have the other. I suppose the other side of it is they don't want to give Derry one over them maybe ahead of the championship meeting. So it's a tough one to know what to expect from Donegal.
Yeah, it is. Look, when it comes to the psychological warfare that managers get involved in, there's nobody better than Jim McGuinness. He's thought each scenario and each possibility out. But I think while giving up the game, maybe in terms of not having Ryan McHugh there or having Michael Murphy, Paddy McBearty available for the Galway game, he didn't mind giving up a defeat to Galway. I can't see him wanting to give a defeat over to Derry, and definitely what he won't want is a heavy defeat, because that will leave scars, and that's 2 games in a row, and that's negative momentum, and all of these things that can change the culture and the mood within a camp. So I'd imagine Donegal will come out all guns blazing for this one, but Derry have to do the same. Derry are fighting for their lives here, and I think they have to sort out that conundrum with, like, I think again it was on the smaller fish. I was listening to that too. You have Brendan Rodgers and you have Conor Glass, and they're the 2 best midfielders in the country. You got to put them back there and figure out a different place for Anton Toll, because I think that Derry really need to put themselves on the front foot. They're going to have to get a few more scores from it. And up front, we're going to see a wee bit more from McGuigan. Like, he's a top quality player, but I think that it was 6 points he got in the last game, maybe, or previous game. He's a player of maybe Shane Walsh's ability, or maybe not quite David Clifford, but he could be a 10-12 pointer. So they probably need to see more of him. I think Shane McGuigan is going to have to step up here to get Derry over the line, but I just can't see it. I see Donegal getting a win on this one. I think they're going to come out and they're going to put down a marker and just exert dominance, really, and psychologically have the advantage then going into the first round of Ulster.
Yeah, I think we've all answered that one. We think Donegal is going to come out on top of that one. And just before we move on, John, I suppose it's a tough one for Derry because the first 3 games that they played, they lost to Tyrone, they lost to Kerry, and they drew with Galway, but they could take positives from all those games. The Tyrone game, Tyrone pulled away in the last 10 minutes. The Kerry game was just 2 quick-fire goals that defeated Derry. And then, of course, Derry come back into it against Galway, having trailed by 8 or 10 points at a stage. So there were positives to take all that. You said you watched the game last week against Dublin. It's very hard to probably find a positive from that game to take into this weekend.
Yeah, well, in fairness, they did finish strong. They got a couple of goals near the end, sort of put a wee gloss on the scoreline. It could have been even more convincing for Dublin. So Derry have quality players. There's no doubt. Everybody in the country knows that they have some of the best players about. So it's up to Paddy and his team around him to try and get the best out of those guys over the next couple of weeks. Because for Derry to drop, it won't be the end of the world. Derry dropping back to Division 2, but a team who won Division 1 last year, they not want to have that record on their shoulders. And then with such a short turnaround, traditionally would have maybe had a longer break heading into the championship, but with now the shorter break heading into the championship, psychology is harder to recover from maybe a relegation in the space of 2 or 3 weeks to get yourself up for a huge Ulster Championship game. So there's definitely a lot riding in this weekend's game.
And Damien, moving on then to the bottom, we'll stay with the bottom of Division 1 and talk about the other 2 Ulster teams up there. And we'll start with Armagh. They have Dublin coming to the Box Athletic Grounds this weekend, and I know as an Armagh fan, this is a really exciting game to look forward to, just bringing the Dubs to the Athletic Grounds. 2011, I think, was the last time Dublin were up playing in Armagh, so an exciting game to look forward to. But in terms of the outcome, or in terms of trying to get points on the board, it's a tough ask for Armagh.
It is a tough ask, yeah, and I suppose we're all expecting a fall off from Dublin, and you're losing James McCarthy, Jack McCaffrey, Brian Fenton, like unbelievable quality players, some of the best players we've ever seen play the game. and we're expecting this fall off. And to be fair to Dublin, we haven't seen much of a fall off in the league. They've played, some really good football, but I think it's the type of challenge that Armagh will relish. I think that the opportunity to, put themselves back and say, the Dubs are coming to town and they're there to dethrone and have a cut at the All-Ireland champions. I think it's the sort of battle that Kieran McGeeney and the guys there will absolutely love. What I like about Armagh, one thing they have to solve, obviously, is discipline. It's a problem. It's cost them games, but there's such a variety of players stepping up at different moments in time, and the panel strength, I think, is really strong in Armagh. And I just think that there are small issues that need tweaking for a team that maybe the expectation was they've got their Celtic crosses in their back pocket. They'll step back off a little bit, and their motivation won't be high. I think we've seen that their motivation is high. They want to come back and show that was no fluke. That was well earned, and it was well earned. So I actually fancy Armagh to get the win on this one. I think that they'll bring Dublin to a difficult place, and a lot of these Dublin players haven't really been brought to a very, very physical, difficult place where they're being asked, how much do you really want this? I think if Armagh can do that and keep their discipline at the same time, then I think Armagh will win this one.
I hope so. I hope you're right, Damien. John, do you go along with that, or how do you see this one going? Because I know Armagh, they have a big, fairly hefty injury list, and I think Ben Creeley's been added to that. He went off against Mayo with a hamstring injury, so they're missing a few key men. But as Damien said, bringing the Dubs to athletic grounds, you would hope brings the best out in Armagh.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Armagh will edge it. Probably the fact that it's in the athletic grounds. Dublin, had it been in Croke Park, you would have fancied Dublin, but the fact that I think it's a sellout in the athletic grounds on Saturday evening, and it's going to be a huge atmosphere, and Armagh will be up for it. The record there is pretty good in recent years as well. They are, of course, the defending All-Ireland champions, so they'll see a win maybe on Saturday evening could be enough to keep them up maybe for another season. So that alone will give them enough motivation. The Dubs probably are going to stay up at this stage. Whether they want to get the league final or not, I'm not too sure as well. That might take a bit of an edge off them, but certainly if Armagh start that game well, the crowd's behind them, it'll be a real battle, But I think Armagh's probably need at the minute is higher than Dublin's, and that should be enough till injuries or not to get them over the line.
And staying in Division 1, John, talking about needs to win, Tyrone's in the same situation as Derry and Armagh, that they're going to have to find points somewhere along the line here. I think they're going to Galway this weekend, and this is an incredibly tough test for Tyrone. Galway are top of the league, four wins from 4, and Tyrone have lost their last 3 games, so it's a really big game for Tyrone here.
Yeah, Tyrone started the league really bright with that first win out, and then they've lost 3 in the bounce, so that early optimism doesn't be long turning around. But listen, Malik O'Rourke's a shrewd enough man to know that it will take time for him to get his structures in place and to get the right players he wants in the right positions. They were unlucky last weekend against Kerry, take David Clifford out of it, probably Tyrone should have won that game, so Tyrone have a lot of quality players. They'd be hurting the fact they've lost 3 in the bounce. They know the importance of this weekend as well. If they can win down in Galway, it'll give them a massive boost in their survival hope. So, and again, Galway comfortably sitting at the top of the table. They might try maybe a couple of different things this weekend, maybe give a couple of players bits of rest and bits of boys recovering from injuries. It could be an opportunity for Tyrone to get a big win on the road, and I think they might just do enough to get over the line down in Salt Hill. Or I think it's in Tuam, that game.
Tuam, I think that all the Ergal Cairn boys now, I don't know, Joe Goose maybe didn't play last week, Damien, but the 2 Canavans played and Petey Hart come on, so a big boost for Malik O'Rourke now given the rest of the games.
Yeah, absolutely, a big boost, and it's just going to be interesting to see, because the Galway squad still aren't at full strength. Obviously, the 2 key players that they're missing are Conroy and Comer, and it'll be just interesting how quick they come back or when they get back. You want to see those guys playing for Galway. It's funny that I think that the 2 teams that the new rules will suit are coming head to head here. I think Galway are my favourites for the All-Ireland. I just think that they've got so much attacking power, and I think Tyrone are going to make massive progress here. I think there could be an Ulster title in Tyrone, but they're going to need the Canavans playing really well. They're going to have to maybe Darren McCurry back in and playing to the top of his game for them to turn this around. The interesting one for me in this is so Galway play New York the week after the league final. Do Galway want to go to a league final? Do they want to maybe spend a few days doing heavy work before New York and then prepare for, I think it's Roscommon the following week after that? These are the questions that, because we're in such a congested and condensed season, nobody really knows what the mindset in Galway is going to be. But I still think the home advantage will be enough for Galway here. Tyrone on their Malachy O'Rourke, they'll figure it out. They'll get it. They'll get the game and they'll figure out the best way of playing it. It's just when they find that point and when they get to that point, is it going to be in time for them to salvage Division 1 football? But I don't think that they'll hit the panic button if they get relegated out of Division 1. I think when our two last All-Ireland winners came from Division 2, I think the whole thing about staying in Division 1 maybe has been diluted a bit.
And staying then, going down to Division 2, and back to Division 2, Damien, we have Monaghan and Louth coming up this week, and again a huge game for both sides. If Louth win, they can they're out of that relegation battle really. If they lose, they're staying in it. While Monaghan, they're looking at the other end of the table, they're hoping to bounce back up to Division 1 at the first time of asking. So a big 2 points here. I think this is in Drogheda on Sunday.
Yeah, it is. It's in Drogheda, and it's a big one in terms of the Meath Roscommon result has really opened it back up now for Monaghan in terms of that they have it in their own hands completely, and they can finish top of the table, which is something that I'm sure they'll be trying their very, very best to do. This really is a local derby in terms of for the Louth people. Outside of Meath, this would be their big local derby. They'll want to have a real cut at this one. But Monaghan, I think, have shown Andy Moore doing great work with their forwards there. Stephen O'Hanlon back in with a little bit of space. He's such a dangerous forward, and I think he had a really, really good game at the weekend gone by from all accounts. So I think Monaghan will just get the edge on Louth here, but they're going to have to earn everything in Drogheda. It's an area, it's a tight pitch. There's not a lot of space. The surface, I don't think it's a Prunty pitch or a sand-based pitch, and I think it might just suit that Louth can bring Monaghan into as close to a dogfight as you can get under these new rules. But I still think Monaghan will just have the quality to get over the line.
And John, what have you made of Monaghan so far? Because I know we were speaking about them on Monday's show and we're making the point that, perhaps with Conor McManus gone, there was a few question marks hanging over them, but they've responded well in terms of their scoring, and there's different players stepping up. Damien mentioned Stephen O'Hanlon, you have Micheál Bannigan there, Conor McCarthy still doing the business. Rory Began's their second, or their joint top scorer with David Gardland. So there's plenty of scoring talent in Monaghan anyway.
Yeah, and they definitely are one of the teams who have really taken these new rules on. And when you have Roy Began as a goalkeeper, similar to Tyrone with Niall Morgan, you can really benefit from that +1 coming up the field. And obviously the 2 pointers from free kicks, there's no better man in Ireland that had a free kick than Roy Began, So yeah, Monaghan have been quietly going about their business. To see this big weekend as a big test from local derby, as Damien said. So, a Monaghan win and they can almost have one hand back in Division 1 for next season. So it won't be easy, but Monaghan, so far so good from this season, bar that blip against Roscommon. They've started the season really well in the post Conor McManus era.
And then in Division 3, John, Antrim they're back to winning ways. The one last weekend against Leitrim, and I suppose just keeping the teams below them. I think Leitrim are below them on Sligo at the minute. So keeping them below them is key, and I know Antrim are away to Laois this weekend, and I think Laois beat them in the semi-final of the Talton Cup last year, so maybe that bit of revenge and a bit of motivation for Antrim going down there too.
Yeah, no, as always, survival will be key for Antrim in Division 3, and one more win could do that for them, you know. So, Leach will be a tough place to go. They're coming off the back of a disappointing performance against Kildare last weekend. So, Antrim, you know, they're going to be up against it, but they'll be in one more win from them last 3 games to secure Division 3 for another year. And then, obviously, their attention will switch to that big championship game against Armagh. But they'll have taken plenty of positives, scoring 4 goals last weekend against Leitrim. So, you never know. There could be an upset on the cards, but it'll be the last 2 games that are probably going to define Antrim's season National League wise.
And for Monaghan the same, Damien, they're at home to Sligo this week, who are in 0 points. So for Monaghan, a huge win for them last week against Offaly, and a chance for them to back that up now and make it 2 from 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very briefly on Antrim, I actually got up to see the Antrim Leitrim game last weekend, and very, very impressed with Antrim. They used McCann at full forward as a target man exceptionally well, and I just thought they were really well set up. Andy McEntee had them few very little clever nuances around kickouts and stuff like that. They looked really impressive. I thought Antrim looked right on their game. For Fermanagh, that was a huge win last weekend. I think, in fairness, like Offaly looked like the team that were going to take that second spot after Kildare in the division. So Kieran will be delighted with that win this weekend. I suppose it's a bit of a surprise that Sligo have gone without a win so far in Division 3. You know, they had been making great work. Their underage over the last few years has been really good, with those kind of titles and getting to All-Ireland finals. So there's a wave of good Sligo players coming, but they're obviously just not there yet. So I think Fermanagh will be targeting this one. It's a massive game for them, and they'll be going all guns blazing. I think they'll have enough to get over the line as well.
Yeah, a couple of huge games coming up this weekend, and we'll be back on Monday, and we'll be reflecting on all them games and bringing you our highlights of the week and everything else, or the main discussion points. We're looking forward to these 2 big Ulster derbies, and of course all the rest of the Ulster games coming up this weekend as well. So that's all we'll have for Thursday's show. We'll be back on Monday at the usual time of 12 o'clock. So make sure to follow us on all our social media pages, on Spotify if that's where you get your podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. So John, Damien, thanks very much for coming on and giving us your insights into all them games.
Thanks
very much, Sean.